I would tell, startups and people getting started, number one is you're just simply going to fail a lot. And so, it's that Theodore Roosevelt, quote that in any situation, the best thing to do is the right thing to do, and the next best thing is the wrong thing to do, and the worst thing to do is nothing.
Sure.
And so the taking action, like the execution side of it, is what's so important. And then you learn. And that doesn't mean you don't plan. It just means you don't plan and plan and plan and not execute. So, have that, as Chet would say, that big pig-headed discipline that, we are going to stay the course, and so I just think that so much of our success has been that, yes, we are willing to take action. We certainly don't want to fail, but we're not afraid of it. That gal, Sarah Blakely, from Spanx, I remember her telling the story, Mike, about when she was growing up, she would, at dinner time, they would sit around the table and her parents would have them talk about their failures and the things they screwed up, and they would celebrate the stuff that didn't work. And so that I love the idea that she learned early that that's cool. It's okay.
Yep.
We can't be afraid of the failures, and we don't hide them when they happen, because then we don't learn from them. And so I think you almost need to, you don't wish for failures, but you've got to embrace them, and then maybe so our kind of, totally, I got to make things easy. I was never the 4.0 A student, so I got to make it easy. Is for us, it's a simple formula. It's that we plan like crazy, and plan like crazy again doesn't mean that we do that without the follow-ups. We plan like crazy, so we do take the Chet approach of being strategic and then employing tactics rather than just being tactical all the time. So we plan like crazy, then we execute, and then we measure and iterate, and we repeat that all over again. And so, for a startup, if they would have that, that plan, not be afraid to fail, learn from it, and continue on, you're going to succeed. If you don't throw in the towel, you are going to succeed. Now, the other things, come into play in terms of how good your business model is, how good your marketing plan is, how good your people are, will determine maybe how quickly you succeed or maybe how much you succeed, of course. But when you stay the course and you don't throw in the towel, you're going to make it if you stay the course. So those are the things, in terms of always resourcing myself, not being afraid to fail, having a plan, executing on it, then learning from the screw-ups, iterating, going this way and going that way, and turning a little bit left here and a little bit right there, and maybe a hard as hell left on this one here that we totally screwed up. And I think this. I'm sure this isn't a unique part of the story, but the ironic thing is this: two things. One is we've had things that we were so sure were going to do great that didn't do great, and then we other things that we just stumbled on, and all of a sudden it was working awesome. It was like, oh my gosh. And that's the beauty of just taking action, is you'll have some of those things that there's nothing brilliant in my mind that said this is going to be awesome. It just kind of happened. Or our people, who are that's the secret, is the people. Our people ended up helping us discover something or do something differently, and boom, voila, game changer.
Good plan is better than a great plan.
Amen. Amen. Good plan executed, better than a great plan any day. These three primary reasons why businesses either don't succeed like they want to, or they flat out fail. And of course, Michael Gerber talks a lot about the failures in E-Myth, and you're probably familiar with his statistic, because he says 80% fail within 5 years, and then of the 20% that are still going after 5 years, 80% of them fail in the next 5, between years 6 and 10. So we've got enormous, and so I think that's very daunting, unless you begin to peel back the layers a little bit, because I'll give you a few examples. I did a blog post on this just last week where I compared. Awesome. Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I think the three main reasons that I've seen, both from my experience, but also I've read every imaginable blog post and white paper that I could find about the top reasons for business failures. So I've read all of those, and so I think my opinion here is both my experience as well as supported by the data. And so I think the number one reason is poor or lacking leadership. And again, doesn't mean they're not good people. It just, it's, like one of the people that, or a couple of people that taught me a lot about this were Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes, where, one of the things they'll say is resources are really valuable. If you got a guy like me who can get you, $50,000 or $100,000, that's really valuable. But resourcefulness is invaluable because a good leader finds ways to get things done. And at the end of the day, most of the time, it's the leader or the leadership team that not only determines direction, but probably is going to determine, success or failure. So I think that's the number one reason. The second thing that I see, Mike, and that I think is missing, and this goes back to that Peter Drucker comment that the legendary management guru Peter Drucker said, everything boils down, all of business boils down to two things, innovation and marketing. And he said everything else kind of supports that. And so what I would say to the second most common, reason why businesses either, fail or don't succeed would be a poor marketing plan or no marketing plan. Because, at the end of the day, if you've got cooler widgets than me, Mike, but I've got the better marketing plan, if the world doesn't know about your cool widgets, then, we're just placing bets on how long you last.
Definitely.
And so that's the second reason. And the third reason, which potentially is a little bit self-serving, but I think it's real, and that is the lack of access to capital. And, I've had this, I think it's a great discussion because I love some of the pundits and naysayers and things like that who will engage in dialogue about this, because I absolutely agree that sometimes access to capital, whether you get a bunch of venture money or a bunch of angel investors or you get, some financing through some debt, either way, it could be spent, poorly. And so, but I've yet to see any of those lists, and I told you, I think I've read all the lists of the reasons why businesses fail. I've yet to see any of those lists say that somebody had too much access to capital and they just couldn't handle that and they failed. But again, sometimes, yes, people absolutely don't spend the money wisely. And we actually have a white paper about that because I collaborated with Barbara Taylor, who's a New York Times blogger, on how to both build value and grow revenues when you acquire capital. So I think it's a great argument. But at the end of the day, the third reason, I gave them to you in I think the order that is probably, again, in my opinion, the proper order. So I think the third reason is the no access or the lack of access to capital. This is a common question that we get, and it's completely misunderstood, and I often read articles that make me cringe where even, writers don't properly and accurately even, cover this kind of a topic, So, obviously for a startup business owner, we all know that you have fewer options in terms of raising capital or obtaining financing. You have fewer options than the guy who's established and profitable. Obviously, we can't change that, and I'm not even suggesting that should change. But, I think it all begins with knowing your options. One of our most common and most popularly downloaded ebook or white paper is the one about the 16 most common ways to obtain your financing. And so it all starts there, number one. And so that document is created to help people kind of answer the question you just asked me, number one. And so when you begin to kind of turn, everybody thinks this is confusing or they don't understand it. And, the beauty is that when you do get your hands around everything, it's actually not real, it's not real difficult. So you got about 3 or 4 equity options. You got venture capital, you got angel investors, you got private equity, you got friends, family, fools, But again, for most people, that's not a good option. Obviously, if you've got an amazing leadership team and you're in biotech or software, well, and you're in Silicon Valley, then maybe venture capital is a little different than the guy who's, getting started on his own, anywhere else in the country, so to speak. So,
Definitely.
So then what we primarily focus on are obviously the debt solutions, which leaves you, 10, 11, 12, real options, Now, of those, they're not all options for a startup. You can't go factor your receivables if you're a startup, which, again, factoring is an amazing option if it's done with the right, factoring facility company and things like that. I know for us, Mike, if I was able to factor my receivables, it would actually be less expensive than me just accepting Visa and MasterCard, which I do every day. And people, really? Are you serious? No way. Well, it's absolutely true. But it's also like anything else. You can do about anything in the financing space either the right way or the wrong way. Of course, if you do it the wrong way, then it would probably be more expensive. So as it gets back to your question related to startups, you probably have friends, families, and fools, as an option. In some senses, you might be able to do SBA financing, but you have to understand or remember, and you probably read that post. I think I touched on a little bit, or maybe it's a different post where
80.
I mean, did I touch on the SBA stuff in that or not?
You did. I tweeted it out just because I thought it was a great message.
Cool. And so at the end of the day, we love SBA financing, and it is awesome. And for them to close 60,000 SBA loans, I agree that's good and that's a lot. But it's also less than 1%. It's a very difficult thing for most people. So does it belong on the list? Yes. But is it going to be an enormously low percentage of people that can really bring that to fruition? And not only that, but of the 60,000 that they closed in their record year ever, only about 20 to 30% of those were startups. So again, I think where I'm going with that. Even though it belongs on the list, or it is an option for some people, for most people it's not. So, for example, when you ask about business lines of credit, there's we talk about unsecured solutions, and we educate people on the 3 different kinds of unsecured business lines of credit, and one of those are credit cards. So statistically, according to NFIB and SBA and Meredith Whitney Advisory Group, about 4 out of 5 small business owners use credit cards. The problem, Mike, is they basically all use them the wrong way. And then all the people that write about this online, they also live in the shallow end of this pool, and they never swim to the depths of helping people understand this with any kind of depth. And it's completely obvious that they're writing this from a conceptual and theoretical standpoint. They don't do this crap,
Yeah.
So what I mean by, doing it they all do it the wrong way, we actually define what that means. So, for example, what we always talk about, Mike, is nobody, there's all kinds of small business loan consultants and brokers and finance guys out there. And this is not to say they're bad guys, but what it probably is to say, Mike, is that they're probably not actually very well informed, okay? And so, for example, none of them are going to say that what I'm going to help you do would be I'm going to help you borrow money the wrong way. But then if you say, well, if you'll help me do it the right way, can you define that? Well, we'll get you good interest rates and we'll do the right thing and we'll take good care of you. But we define that with 6 different measurement tools that say, here's the 6 things that you would want to accomplish in properly borrowing money, or in this case, using credit cards, because it is by far the most common form of financing for these guys you asked me about, both startups as well as people in their first couple of years. But the problem is this: none of the small business finance consultant guys, none of them can monetize and make any money off helping people use credit cards the right way. So my question is, do you think any of them give it merit or help them understand that if they can't make a buck off of it?
Definitely not.
Well, of course not. And again, it doesn't mean they're bad guys. It just means they just aren't going to make any money, so it's not worth their time. So what we've done is we've spent a lot of time helping people understand that. We give them the 6 measurement tools or the 6 benefits of, what will happen if they use those credit cards the right way, so that then as they get their business off the ground, then they will be able to continue to borrow money as they need it in the future when they have more opportunities. And so that's cool. But here's the other part of that, Mike, is, we always hate talking about the risk side of it. We always hate talking about, well, what if the business fails? Well, why the heck wouldn't we talk about what if the business fails when statistically the majority of them do, right?
Yep.
And so what happens is when a business fails, and again, remember, they're great friends of mine at Benetrend, so this isn't meant to be, and I've got a lot of great friends who do SBA loans. Well, what happens when you got an SBA loan or you financed your 401k or your IRA, and what if those were the tools that you used to get your business off the ground before it was proven? Well, we kind of know SBA is going to take every kind of collateral that they can get their hands on, and that means that if you owned your home, then you're out on the street, you're living with Uncle Louie or Mom and Dad, and of course if you tap the IRA, we know you lost the nest egg, those kind of things. So the thing about the credit card financing is everybody throws stones at it, but it's simply because they do it the wrong way. I don't like credit card financing when it's done the wrong way, so I kind of would be part of that posse, but then none of them ever talk about how it's done the right way. So for example, how can I have $50,000 or $100,000 of credit card debt that's at really low interest rates and that's not showing up on my credit report, so I still have an amazing credit score and credit profile, and now a year later I've paid that down, that from $100,000 I now own 50 or 60, and now I still have those 780 FICO scores. I've got really low interest rates. It's an amazing cash flow tool, Mike, because one of the things that drives me nuts is we always say cash flow is king, but then everybody ignores it and forgets all about it when they go borrow their money. And we worry about things like interest rates. Well, personally, Mike, I'll take a 12% interest rate with a monthly payment that's lower than an 8% interest rate with a monthly payment that's higher, myself personally. I'll do that every day of the week.
Definitely.
And again, that doesn't mean that the rates would be bad with credit cards, because we've got tons of case stories of people with, and I don't mean when they've got a 0% offer. I mean after all those introductory offers are over, we've got all kinds of case studies of people paying 4 and 6 and 7%, because they're using that, they're doing it the right way, and they're protecting, preserving, and improving their credit profile and all that kind of stuff. So that's a pretty long-winded answer to your question, but as it relates to startup options, friends, families, fools, SBA financing, credit cards, those are your primary options. Of course, you're well aware of the 401k option, for certain people if they have IRAs and 401ks, so that belongs on the list also. Well, yeah, the six benefits or the 6 measurement tools are, number one, can you always continue to obtain additional access to capital? So number one is you want whatever solution you employ to allow you to later on not be inhibited from borrowing again. So you want to be able to always obtain additional capital as you need it for your business. That's number one. Number two is you want to separate your personal and business credit so they're not merged together. All right. Number three is you want to be able to protect, preserve, or improve your credit profile as you borrow money. All right. Nobody does that. Nobody knows how to do it. Nobody talks about it, but it's really important. And we see 140, 150 people every week sending in pre-quals to us, and if they were doing that, we'd be able to get a whole lot more people, a lot more money, and we'd be able to get a lot quicker, but nobody's doing that. All right. Then you want to minimize your interest expenses. All right. You want to maximize your minimize your interest expense, meaning get as good a rate as possible. You want to maximize your tax benefit. The best books that I use that, and I love to resource myself through these different, training tools. And so the 3 best that I've read are E-Myth, and again, this is me, E-Myth, Traction by Gino Wickman, if you're familiar with Traction at all, and Good to Great. Obviously, kind of a legendary book there.